now
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:06 on O'Connor and Company. It's a big 8 o'clock hour ahead. In 60 minutes, we'll hand it off to Chris Plant. And coming up in 30 minutes, Brett Sovic. He's with the Tim Pool Media Empire on YouTube, where he focused on pop culture issues. We'll talk about the Russell Brand drama, as well as Bill Maher is going to be the next. And a lot of high-profile people now sort of circumventing the writer's strike. We'll get into all of that. I'm Larry Conner alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good
Julie.
morning.
I'm a Marylander, and we can count our Republican congressional delegation on one hand, well, really on one finger, one digit. It's Andy Harris. Thank God he's there, though. Congressman Harris, thank you for doing a great job. Appreciate you joining us.
Good morning.
Well, so here we are. We have a crisis in Congress, I'm sure you've heard, with regard to an imminent government shutdown. And I know that the Speaker is trying to put together a continuing resolution. The Senate's already balking at it. And Congressman Harris, honestly, I thought we were done with these continuing resolutions and the omnibus package. I was told that we were going to go back to regular order and have a budget process and committee hearings. And why are we here again?
Well, you know, it all started when the president presented his budget a month late. He turned in his homework late. Then he dragged out the debt ceiling negotiation for 4 months. So we really couldn't start the appropriations process until May, until we reached that agreement. So, look, we got all the bills. We got 10 of the 12 bills through the House committees. We got one off the floor. But the deadline's coming up, and I think we have to deal with the fact that we now have over a $2 trillion deficit, historically unprecedented in a time when we're not at war and when there's no pandemic. We have a wide open southern border. We think there's a group of us on the Republican side who think this is the opportunity to scale back some of that spending and to close the southern border.
Yeah, and obviously, voters want that kind of action, but the Democrats see a shutdown as advantageous. Do you think that they're going to cooperate and negotiate in good faith?
Well, look, if they want to shut down the government because they don't want to control the border, let's have that discussion with the American people. I mean, the fact of the matter is that this government, with regards to the border, isn't doing what it's supposed to do with the money they're spending. So, why give them more money? Let's close the southern border. Let's scale back to some of the spending. Deal with that $2 trillion deficit. The president bragged that, he was bringing the deficits down. Oh, no, he doubled the deficit. And again, outside of a pandemic.
Yeah. So let me just be clear on what you're advocating for here. You're basically saying, listen, we're not going to agree to one penny of spending to keep this government chugging along unless we get serious about the border. So here's what we're going to put out there. And this is the money that must be spent to secure the border and to empower enforcement of the law. And if the Democrats don't go along, they're responsible for a shutdown because they want the border to stay open.
That's right. It's that simple. I mean, the American people will see it for what it is. All we're saying is let's actually, like every other country in the world, let's control our border.
Yeah.
And if the Democrats say, no, we don't want that, we just want to, whistle past the graveyard, let's have that discussion every day of the week with the American people.
I love how that sounds in theory. Here's what I'm wondering. How do you force that issue on an administration who, through the president, the vice president, and the secretary of Homeland Security, refuse to do that job? The law is already there. It's already their job to enforce the border, and they're claiming that it is secure. So how will you actually craft this to force them to do the job that they're already neglectful in doing?
Well, look, we can't force them to do it, but we can show the American people that in the 2024 election, if you return a Republican majority to Congress and a Republican to the White House, you're actually going to have border control. If you don't, if you return Democrats, you're going to have a wide open border. We're setting it up. It's lose-lose for the Democrats. I mean, if they agree with us, they lost their policy of a wide open border. If they don't agree with us, they face the music in 2024.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think that that's a savvy political statement to make. The fact is, though, even if they call your bluff and they get more funding for the border, they're just going to spend it on opening the border that much wider. Oh, we've got more money now, so we can hire more agents to help process more people crossing illegally.
Yeah, that's the problem with a Democrat in the White House and Democrats controlling the Senate. We control 1/2 of 1/3 of the government, the Republicans, by a margin of 4 votes. So again, we
Yeah.
just have to show the American people if you change that scenario, we may actually be able to control the southern border because the Democrats certainly, I think, are going to resist it.
Okay, Congressman, can I ask you about some Maryland politics? So the Secretary of State seems to be going through a process where she will unilaterally decide whether Donald Trump is allowed to be on the ballot for Republican voters to choose whether he should be the nominee for president. First of all, why is this just her choice and a unilateral decision, number one? And number two, what business is it of hers if Republicans want to choose Donald Trump as the nominee in Maryland?
Yeah. Well, it's a little quirk in the Maryland law that the presidential candidates don't actually have to file a certificate of candidacy. Every other office does, but not the presidency. So it's up to the Secretary of State to determine who's on the ballot. But I'll tell you, it's not going to be her choice. It's going to be a judge's choice if she makes the wrong decision. Look, I think she said, they're looking at it, but I think that's what she has to say because that's what she is a Democrat. That's what the Democrats kind of want her to say. But in the end, I can't believe that any Secretary of State is going to take that chance because they will look foolish because the courts will absolutely turn that away.
Yeah, I want to turn to D.C. crime. Crime is so bad that in the district that Congress is distributing tips to avoid being carjacked in the Capitol. What is Congress going to do? Are they going to step in again? And also, what do you tell your staff? I was a Hill staffer for 10 years. Metroing to Union Station, walking up to the Capitol. And, that can be really dangerous for congressional staffers. What kind of advice are you personally giving to your staff?
Well, look, I mean, that they have to realize that, the large democratically controlled cities like Washington are actually dangerous places. Mm-hmm. But, I tell them, look, within where the Capitol Police are present, I think it's a safe environment. And I do think that from most hours of the day, the metro places like that are safe. But again, you have to be looking over your shoulder all the time. And who wants to live that way? But apparently, until Congress retakes control of the district, an out-of-control district, that's the way we're going to have to live.
Is there an appetite for that amongst your Republican colleagues? I've heard more this session, I think, leaning toward pulling away from the home rule experiment that has clearly failed. There is no leadership that can effectively fix the problem here. They've had more than opportunities. They've had more than ample funding to do so. And District of Columbia, sadly, is broken. Are your colleagues ready to actually start to play? I've heard President Trump say this on the campaign trail, that it's time to take back federal control of the district.
I think your perception is right. There are actually a growing number of the folks on the Republican side of the aisle who say that, the experiment hasn't worked. There's high crime, there's high drugs, carjackings. The latest is that they want to do a petition now as to whether or not they should outlaw gas appliances and pay for people to convert to electric appliances. I mean, this is just insanity. Where do they think electricity comes from? The wall,
the plug, that plug
the plug.
thing. Yeah. Well, and the good news is electric cars apparently are a lot easier to carjack. So they're just making things easier, Congressman Harris. They're always thinking of the people. Thank you for joining us. Wish we had more time.
All right, thank you.
All right, good to talk
Bye
with
now.
you. That is the Republican from Maryland in Congress.